That kind of threat and others in Asia prompting Japan to pump up defense spending, raising it by more than 27% to around $50 billion. The long-standing pacifist nation now third behind the US and China. Well, Japan's move, we've heard there, is in line with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's plans to boost the country's military capabilities as it seeks to address a string of regional threats. Let's get more. We're joined by Philip Shetler-Jones. He's an associate fellow in Indo-Pacific Geopolitics at the Council on Geostrategy. Dr. Shetler-Jones, welcome. Now, we've just heard much has been made of the increase in Japan's defense budget, but some analysts say that, in fact, it's not enough being spent, and the increase is in fact proportionate to what's needed to get Japan's budget to where it was some 15 years ago. Are you in that camp?
Good evening. Yes, I'm largely in that camp. I think you have to consider that these increases are part of a planned increase over a period of 5 years. Japan is coming from a low base, around 1%, which was decided in the 1970s. And some of the increase will also be a matter of changing the ways we count what is coming under the heading of defense spending. But overall, yes, considering the threat assessment and where Japan is coming from, I would consider it a responsible and proportionate change.
And as you break down the numbers, any surprises to you as to where the money is going? Is it to new areas or more of the same? Because Japan historically funnels its spending on very expensive weapon systems.
You're right that the systems Japan has been procuring for most of its post-war history have been over the normal price. And that's partly because Japan has wanted to manufacture quite a lot of its equipment itself, and it's banned itself from exporting, and so that's raised the price. But I think some of the areas are what you'd expect, considering a technological arms race that's going on with technologies like missile and anti-missile defenses. So research and development will be a large part of where the new money goes. The object which has captured most attention are new strike weapons, or counter-strike as they're called, and that will come with the need for an even larger suite of sensors and intelligence systems so that you know where the targets are and you can assess the battle damage if you strike them. Some of the other areas you might also guess from observing the way that the war of Russia and Ukraine has gone, because it's been a surprise to many of the countries involved how fast inventories of weapons run out, and you need larger stockpiles. But Japan will also be probably spending a considerable sum on hardening the existing base areas and extending a bit more towards the southern islands where it perceives as now a larger threat.
And in your opinion, is this all where Japan should be spending their money? Because there are basic shortcomings, such as failing to meet recruitment targets and an aging population, that all this expensive hardware and research is really not going to solve.
Yes, I think the problem of the demographic challenge and retention and recruitment of really what have to be highly skilled personnel to operate this technology is a problem acknowledged in the strategy. And it's one where even Japan has found some difficulties. So some of the money will probably have to go there, as well as changing some of the attitudes towards a life in service in the self-defense forces in Japan. So I would expect them to be an increase in campaigns really to attract the right kind of recruits. As you know, Japan doesn't have a national service or a conscription. It's an entirely volunteer force.
Now, you've talked about the Chinese-Russian alignment as being a geopolitical worst-case scenario for Japan. Of course, there are also concerns about North Korea and Taiwan. Now, as you read the document, do you see clues in it and a strategy there as to how Japan intends to respond to these various issues in turn?
Well, one of the responses is to increase Japan's indigenous capacity for its own self-defense. And part of the rationale behind procuring new systems like long-range or medium-range strike is to raise Japan's level of deterrence. And I think that's partly one of the observations coming from watching the war in Europe, that a country's best guarantee for its defense is really its own capacity. If it wants other countries to come and help, it has to do a strong job on its own in the first place. But I do think that the alignment of China with Russia over the course of the Ukraine war has been something of a shock to Japan. Until recently, very strong efforts were made to have a peaceful agreement with Russia and increase all kinds of economic relations on energy and other areas. And so the fact that since the war, the China-Russia relationship has got closer, and even countries who are also a concern for Japan, like North Korea, seem to have aligned with China and Russia on the war.
Interesting stuff. I appreciate your thoughts there. Dr. Philip Shetler-Jones, Associate Fellow in Indo-Pacific Geopolitics, the Council of Geostrategy. Thank you.